All right, it is 10:01. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all for being here. We're excited to end 2025 on somewhat of an exciting note, looking ahead to 2026 and some of the changes that we think are going to be coming that are going to be affecting small businesses that we are paying very close attention to. And hopefully, you'll get a little bit more insight into what you might want to be thinking about for the coming year and some of the changes that might be impacting your business. For anybody who's new to these webinars, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction to Paragus IT. We are about a 60-person employee-owned managed services company based out of both Western and Central Massachusetts. And we serve small businesses across New England who are looking to have an IT partner, someone who's there to help them think about technology, handle the day-to-day responsibilities, and also be their strategic partner when it comes to things like planning and thinking about the future, which is really what we're here today to talk about. So I want to start off with kind of what prompted us to choose this particular topic. Why did we decide to include this in our webinar calendar? So first, there's a lot of forces that are coming together to shape 2026, and we'll talk about that more in a few minutes as we look at kind of the confluence of several major things all coming together at the same time. We want to make sure that we use this time to help you separate what we believe to be the trends that are actually going to manifest versus some of the hype that I think is not quite there yet and maybe will never materialize. But then also just to help you with some practical steps that you can take as you start the new year so that you can make sure that your business is ready for what's ahead. My goal is that by the end of the session, you'll know exactly where to focus, what to ignore, and what the biggest opportunities are. So let's start with why we think 2026 is going to be one of the most transformative years yet. And I say one of the most, but I really shouldn't. It really will be the most transformative year yet. And I say that knowing that probably every year from this point on is going to be the most transformative year. And that just has to do with how quickly technology is evolving and changing. But I think we're going to really get a sense of that in 2026. 2025 was really exciting at somewhat of a theoretical level. A lot of the really big breakthroughs were still mainly in the kind of hands of the early adopters. What I think is really going to happen in 2026, above everything else, is that's going to become daily operationalized. So one of the big things that we're following is AI. As you can imagine, we've done a lot of webinars on this topic. It's something that we have to pay very, very close attention to. And I really think 2026 is where this is going to move from hype to operations. And actually, at the end of this webinar, we're going to be unveiling a brand new service that we're launching in 2026, specifically to help businesses with this transformation. The other thing that may sound not all that exciting or significant, but that we are following really closely is a pretty major change in the way that cybersecurity insurance agencies or carriers are operating. There's been a lot of sophistication added to the way that they are reviewing applications, binding coverage, and then paying out policies. So we want to make sure that clients are aware of that and thinking about how that landscape is evolving. The third is one that I think we've all been waiting for, at least to some extent, maybe more of us, some of us more than others, which is robotics, I think, are going to start to become more accessible to SMBs. Historically, you probably have a very, very few number of robots in businesses, certainly some robotic arms in manufacturing facilities, but that's usually about the extent of what we see on a day-to-day basis. I think we're going to start to see robots become a little bit more integrated into businesses and maybe even businesses that you wouldn't have thought of. So we'll talk more about that. Security and IT complexity has hit an all-time high. We'll explore what's going on there and why that matters. And then we want to look at the market forces that are pushing SMBs to modernize faster than ever and why that's going to be so important. This isn't a slow evolution. It's a jump, and it's a jump into a world that is very fast. It's kind of like walking up to a treadmill that's already going really quickly, 15 miles an hour, and jumping on that treadmill and trying to immediately jog at that speed, or run at that speed, I should say. So it's an important thing to be mindful of and thoughtful of as we continue to go into the new year. All right, so with that, let's look at kind of what are some of the trends that we're following. So the first trend that is driving a lot of these changes is cloud consolidation. Companies are relying on fewer and more powerful platforms than ever. And these platforms are better at integrating with each other. So historically, we've worked with a lot of companies who were using lots of different softwares, a lot of it legacy, a lot of installed on their workstations or on their servers, maybe a handful of cloud apps. But we're starting to get to the point where more and more businesses are migrating to more powerful singular clouds. So a good example of that is Microsoft 365. A lot of businesses historically maybe had been using some Google Workspace, maybe some Dropbox, maybe some Drive or Box, and now they're consolidating all of that onto the 365 platform. You also have platforms like Salesforce and the Google platform, all of which are becoming much more powerful tools that can do more things and therefore allow organizations to consolidate more onto those platforms. This has some really nice benefits, but it also has some risks and some security issues that we're going to explore more. So we'll talk more about that as we go through. The next is economic pressure. There's a lot of pressure right now on businesses to deliver more for less. We were somewhat benefited by some of the inflation that was going on that allowed prices to rise for a few years without an enormous amount of pushback from the market. That is very much ended. And I don't think there is any more appetite or willingness for there to be any price increases by the market. But even more so, there's starting to become a pressure for prices to come down. And if you're unable to do that, but a competitor or a new entry into the space is able to offer a similar or very identical product at a lower cost, you're going to start to feel that pressure. And so businesses are very much looking for ways to how do we drive costs down? How do we find opportunities to manage our pricing so that we can continue to be competitive in a market where more and more businesses are lowering prices? Then, as I alluded to, we're seeing some pretty major changes in the way that insurance pressure is being allocated. But it's not just insurance companies. More and more organizations that we work with now have to comply with one or more federal or state agencies. More and more states are enacting data privacy laws. We're hearing about potential AI legislation coming down from the federal government. Some states already adopted AI legislation at the state level. There's a lot going on where many businesses for a long time kind of could ignore the compliance side, even if they were governed by, let's say, HIPAA, which is the High Tech Act for IT. You didn't get audited very often. There wasn't a tremendous amount of pressure to be compliant. And a lot of businesses were what we would call passively compliant. They were technically doing most of the right things, but maybe not taking it as seriously, not investing a lot of time or resources into that. That's really changing. And we're really looking at more and more of these compliance organizations are expecting you to be able to prove it and using fairly sophisticated tools to be able to prove that you're compliant. We're seeing more audits, more third-party certifications. So there's really quite a bit of change happening there. And then obviously, one of the things that we've covered a lot this year is the rise of AI agents. Just this idea that we're having AI employees in our businesses who are able to take over tasks previously done by employees and either aid existing employees or completely replace tasks or jobs by AI. And that's going to become an important trend for 2026 as we go from kind of the peripheral to the mainstream. And then one thing we're hearing from clients is security fatigue. They're overwhelmed by the constant alerts, the security notices, the warnings, the threats, the MFA tokens. It's starting to become a little bit untenable. And we're feeling more and more pressure from our clients to make things simpler, smoother, easier at a time when the security landscape could not be more dangerous. And so that's a really difficult dynamic. It's always a very careful balancing act between convenience and security. But right now we're getting pressure on both sides. People want things to be more convenient, easier, faster, but at the same time, the threat landscape is just at an all-time high. So that's going to take some very careful navigation. All of this in conjunction puts tremendous pressure on SMBs, but it also opens up the door for some massive efficiency gains for companies that move early and get this right. So this isn't all bad news. This isn't all doom and gloom. There really are some pretty incredible opportunities here. but it's going to take some very deliberate and intentional effort. Otherwise, you run the risk of falling behind very quickly. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at what we're calling the new tech stack. So for years, IT was built around networks, servers, and firewalls. Many of us got really good and comfortable at managing those things, and everything existed within that tech stack. We didn't have to worry about all this stuff floating around in other places, and it made the job somewhat more manageable because it was more centralized. But in 2025, and especially in 2026, that stack looks completely different. And it's being reshaped by identity management, by automation, by cloud tools, and by AI. At the base of this is automation. This is the engine that is going to make workflows run consistently, reduce manual labor, and support the rest of the stack. Think of this as the new foundation of your business. If your business has failed to adopt automation and is not continuously investing in ways of using automation to drive the business, you're going to fall behind. And honestly, the rest of the tech stack is not going to matter all that much. Above that, we then have the AI agent layer. These are the agents that are interacting with your tools, your data, your processes, and your people, maybe even your customers. They're taking actions, escalating issues, and they're performing work on your behalf. And they represent a new, almost digital workforce to your business. As we then build up, we have the SaaS environment. Instead of on-prem apps that are installed on servers and workstations, most organizations are now running many, if not a dozen or more cloud tools. As I mentioned earlier, we're starting to see some consolidation there, which is helping to make that more secure and then governing this layer. But this is where most of our clients' businesses live, is at this SaaS layer. This is where kind of the rubber meets the road in terms of their staff are interacting with the business. Then there's data. Data powers all of this. Data is going to power the AI. It's going to inform decisions. It's going to enable the automations. It's going to be the backplane of the SaaS systems. But it also needs governance, privacy controls, quality oversight, AI policy, and many other things that, honestly, for many years, we didn't really worry about. Enterprise had data policies. Small businesses didn't. That's not going to work anymore. We're going to have really strict governance and policy and regulation around where data is stored, how it's retained, how it's allowed to interact with other systems, just taking it to a much more sophisticated level. Then we get to the device level. Every laptop, tablet, mobile device is now a gateway into your environment. And we need consistent controls, patching, compliance, and there really can't be any exceptions. These devices, their access to the network and their access to data has actually increased because with many of these cloud apps, they're authenticated by the device because we don't have traditional things like a client-server network to rely on anymore. What that means is the device is really the center of security in a lot of ways. We've been preaching in the last several webinars using the most sophisticated type of MFA technology, which is a passkey. And what a passkey does is it creates a relationship between a device and a provider. If you get access to that device, you have access to a lot of the MFA tokens that that device has been authenticated against. So this is becoming an increasingly important target for us as we protect and manage clients. At the center of the stack, not really, but really from a technology standpoint, is the identity piece. Identity is the new perimeter. If identity fails, everything above that or below that is going to be exposed. So we have to really, really get good about how we're authenticating our people. We're not using simple usernames and passwords anymore. We're trying to use biometrics wherever possible, other forms of authentication, really making sure that when we are allowing somebody access to a system, to a data, to a device, that we know who that person is, and we have all kinds of information that help us to feel confident that that is the right person. The IP address they're logging in from, the location that they're coming from, the device they're using to do that authentication, biometric data, as I mentioned, and other variables are all being used to really make us feel confident that we're letting the right people in. And then finally, over the entire architecture is governance. Governance is no longer paperwork. It's true automated enforcement of your standards across every system, every identity, every device, every workflow. It has to be monitored in real time. We have to have 24/7 visibility into how governance is being applied. Because if there's an opportunity for a hacker to get in because governance has been laxed in an area, it really compromises the entire stack. So when you combine these layers, you get an IT environment that is modern, it's secure, it's scalable, and it's ready for 2026. But a lot of the tech stacks that we're still managing for our clients don't quite look like this. They're more legacy. They're still a client server model, or they're a consolidated, compressed version of this. This is what it's going to have to look like if you want to be competitive in the coming landscape. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of the trend lines that I mentioned earlier. As AI agents are about to become one of the biggest operational shifts in 2026. Up to now, businesses have interacted with AI in a pretty limited way, usually by asking a chatbot a question or asking a chatbot to generate content for you. But 2026 is going to bring a different kind of AI. AI agents that don't just answer, they actually act. They take actions on your behalf. These agents will be carrying out full workflows, not just pieces of them. They'll be submitting and writing requests, drafting and approving documents, pulling data from multiple tools and updating records, monitoring inbox channels and systems for triggers, for information, for alerts. They'll be escalating issues. They'll be communicating with other agents to coordinate tasks. They're going to become much more autonomous in their workflows. You'll be thinking of them less like tools and more like digital employees in your workforce who run processes in the background 24/7, sometimes without a whole lot of supervision. And they're not necessarily going to replace your entire team. They're going to absorb the repetitive, manual, time-consuming work that your team never had enough bandwidth for anyway and doesn't enjoy doing. That means that humans can focus on more higher value tasks while agents can handle the administrative load. This is a massive opportunity for SMBs. You get scale without adding headcount. You get speed without risking burnout. You get consistency without micromanagement. However, the same is also true in reverse. If you don't do this, you're at an enormous competitive disadvantage to the businesses that are. So we're really looking at 2026 as the year that AI is going to shift from being a helpful assistant to becoming a true operational partner in your business. This is the question we still get all the time. Is it truly ready? Is AI at a place that we really can expect it to do this kind of deep thinking, trust it to do actions on our behalf? And there's a video I want to show you that came out fairly recently. It's not even the newest version of ChatGPT, but take a look at what it has been able to do. Let me just make sure that I've got this optimized for video, and then we will start the video. Okay, perfect.
When GPT-5 Pro came out, I met Mark Chen, who works here at OpenAI. He's Chief Research Officer, and he gave me a challenge. He was very proud. He said, why don't you just give it a hard problem? And I thought, you want a hard problem? Okay. And so I gave it this question.
Quantum gravity.
Right. So I had just found these new symmetries of black holes, which is something that doesn't happen that often. And I'd written up a paper that came out in June on the archive, and I was very happy about that. And I thought, okay, well, let's see how GPT Pro handles this new question. And so I gave it the equation, and I didn't say that it has some symmetries. I didn't give it a leading question. I just said, what are the symmetries? And it thought for 5 minutes, and it said, no symmetries. And I go, it's not there yet. And Mark Chen is visibly crestfallen. He goes, okay, well, just give it an easier question then. And so I think, okay, I'm going to give it the warm-up baby version of the problem, which is find the symmetries of this equation, not in the full black hole spacetime, which is complicated, but in the flat space limit where the spacetime is empty. And hit enter. It thinks for 9 minutes. It comes back with this beautiful answer. oh, this equation has conformal symmetry, which is the correct thing. And here are the three generators. And it was very beautiful. And, this version of the equation, it probably has been studied. I'm sure has been studied many times over the decades. So I don't know what it did exactly, but it came up with the answer. And I thought, okay, this is very good. This is a great outcome. And then Mark said, okay, well, but now that it's been primed on the warm-up example, try again in this instance of chat, the harder problem. And I thought, okay, let's go. And so we give it the hard problem again, hit enter, and it thinks and it thinks. And that was the first time I saw it think for so long. I think it took 18 minutes. And it comes out with this beautiful answer that was completely correct. And that blew my mind because I had been working on this for a very long time. And I would say that calculation is at the edge of my abilities. I think it's something that, very few people could have done the way I did it. And so I was really shocked because, you spend years of your life training to be best in class at something and finding symmetries of black holes and these kinds of equations. That's my jam. And I thought, okay, so I guess that just happened. And it really sent my mind reeling. And I was a little bit shell shocked for a few days, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And after that, I realized, okay, I have to become involved in this, because to see this capability emerge into the world like right now and not be involved with this just seemed crazy to me.
So as you can see in the video, we are approaching the point where AI, when scoped narrowly to a specific task and properly primed, is able to do the highest level of work, the work that we consider to be beyond expert into genius level tasks that people have dedicated their entire professional careers to studying, to mastering, to becoming experts in. And AI is now there. That's going to be transformative. That's going to change the way that we work. We're going to be able to use tools like this to maybe tackle even more complicated problems that we wouldn't have imagined being able to tackle before, because we now have a tool, a resource to help us do that. But it is also going to shift how we're spending our time and what we're dedicating our lives to, because we don't need to study some of these things to the extent that we have, or at least in the same way. And I think that's going to take some time to get used to and to understand, okay, what does that really mean? What does that really look like? How are we really going to change the way that we specialize and become experts and grow and scale and serve? There's a lot of questions, but it is really important to understand we're at a tipping point. We're at a point where the AI technology is able to do some pretty remarkable things, some things that we knew were coming, but now they're starting to actually arrive. And there's still several more hurdles and landscapes to grow, but I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of some of the latest breakthroughs in technology around this. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is just the idea of identity becoming the new firewall. I alluded to this a minute ago, and just starting to talk through how we're looking at where points of entry are into networks. So identity has really become the new security perimeter, not the network itself. We have so many people working remotely, working from home, businesses that don't even have offices. We can't secure things in a nice little box anymore. We wish we could. We liked that. We liked having a nice little perimeter around the building that we controlled and managed, but it doesn't work like that anymore. The identity, the person or system trying to access your data, is really now the new biggest security risk and the most important thing for us to manage. Whether the person's logging in is who they claim to be is a question that we have to be analyzing in real time, 24/7, constantly. And hackers are getting far and far more sophisticated, partly driven by AI. AI is allowing them to mimic writing styles, voices, videos, behaviors with frightening accuracy, making social engineering more believable than ever. And it's not just humans they're targeting anymore. As businesses adopt more automation and more AI agents, attackers have shifted toward compromising automation and on the identities of those tokens that are controlling that automation. Because those systems so often have so much broad access, don't have any oversight, and haven't been trained to be suspicious. This is why identity-first security becomes essential. Passwordless authentication, zero trust, conditional access, behavioral signals, and continuous verification. Identity controls reduce phishing risk, stop impersonation attacks, and close the gaps that attackers are relying on right now. And what you need to know is you don't have to be the best, but you just can't be the worst. Generally speaking, hackers continue to mine the people in the bottom 20%. That's where they spend most of their resources. You're never going to be perfect at these things. You just can't afford to be in that bottom 15 to 20% where the hackers are making most of their money because there's the least amount of effort to get the greatest result. So this is going to be a cornerstone of cybersecurity, and it's going to continue to become more and more important as we look at insurance, compliance, operational safety. The next trend is SaaS sprawl becomes an attack vector. SaaS sprawl is one of the fastest growing risks for businesses right now, and most companies don't realize just how big the problem actually is. Over the last several years, the number of SaaS applications used by the average organization has exploded. Employees are signing up for tools on their own, especially in departments like marketing, sales, ops, and HR. Within months, you end up with dozens, sometimes hundreds of applications who all are storing your data, and in some cases have access to your data through APIs, plugins, and different types of provisioning methods. The problem isn't that IT doesn't have visibility into just a fraction of them. It's really creating the perfect storm. When you have shadow IT, employees adopt tools that never go through any kind of a vetting process to make sure they're secure. Then there's data everywhere, files, customers' information, employees' information, internal documentation. It ends up scattered across a dozen platforms or more. Then we have offboarding gaps. When someone leaves, their accounts in those 10 to 20 SaaS tools that they signed up for stay active. IT has no knowledge of them. They can't disable them. They don't even have access to them if they wanted to. Then we begin to have integration creep. SaaS tools connect to each other behind the scenes, meaning that one compromised account can then compromise additional systems. And then we have these abandoned apps, tools that we stopped using, but the access remains wide open. It's very easy to sign up for trials, to experiment with things, to pilot things, but oftentimes when those pilots end, those trials are canceled, or we move on, we don't properly decommission those tools. In 2026, we're really worried about attackers increasingly exploiting SaaS because it's the least monitored and most overgrown part of an organization's tech stack. The good news is that SaaS sprawl is highly fixable with the right visibility and governance. Cleaning up unused accounts, enforcing identity controls, reviewing permissions, and centralizing app management can dramatically reduce the risk in this area. And it can be done relatively quickly. This is probably one of the most impactful, but also overlooked security improvements an SMB can make going into 2026. The next is tech debt becomes a risk. Tech debt used to be just considered a nuisance, something that maybe slowed systems down or made upgrades more complicated. But in 2026, tech debt is going to become a real operational business risk. Legacy systems, outdated configurations, unsupported software, inconsistent devices, all of these are going to create barriers to everything that we've been talking about. They prevent automation. They limit what AI agents can actually do. They break the governance and create exceptions. They expose vulnerabilities, and they make it so that cyber insurance carriers will not provide coverage. Worse, tech debt shows up in day-to-day operations. It's slowing processes, repeating manual work. We've got data trapped in old tools, and it creates an inconsistent experience for both employees and sometimes even customers. This is why modernization is going to become so essential in 2026, and not just in the sense of a massive digital transformation project. Modernization today means standardizing systems, consolidating tools, cleaning up SaaS sprawl, enforcing identity and device baselines, and eliminating legacy infrastructure that is slowing the business down or creating risk. Small businesses who tackle tech debt proactively will be able to adopt AI, automation, governance, and even robotics 5 to 10 times faster than those who don't. Tech debt is no longer something you deal with later. In 2026, it's going to directly impact your operational speed, your security posture, your insurance costs, and your competitive position. The next trend is cybersecurity insurance is getting a lot tougher. As we've talked a lot about, the threat landscape has never been higher, which means you need cybersecurity as part of your digital strategy. It's the last mile, that last 10%. You're going to do all the right things, which are going to make you 90% secure, but that last 10% is too expensive, too complicated. You just can't do it. And so what you do is you cover that last 10% with cyber insurance. And this isn't a luxury. This is a necessity. It's like having auto insurance. Inevitably, if you own a car, at some point you're getting in an accident and you want that insurance to be there because you don't know how bad the accident's going to be. You don't know who else is going to be involved. You don't know what the liability is going to look like. Cyber is now at that space. It's not an if, it's a when, and you don't know how bad the attack or the impact or the cost is going to be. And so you have to have it. But they're not just giving away these policies anymore. I still remember when it cost $500 to get a policy. You basically just signed a piece of paper that said, I want a cybersecurity insurance. It covered everything. It had $10 million limits. It was great. We are so far removed from that day. First of all, the coverages have come way down. The premiums have skyrocketed off the charts. And the attestations that you go through to bind that coverage are sometimes 25 pages long. And now they're moving from just trusting what you put on that paper to actually doing verification. So some of the carriers are now wanting proof, not promises. They're asking us to provide logs, reports, screenshots, validation. They're almost acting like an accreditor or an auditor who is giving you a certification. We're going through some of the same processes and level of scrutiny that we would in those situations. We're also seeing a rise in what's called continuous or periodic security assessments. In other words, it's not enough just to bind the coverage on a one-time basis. They're putting in tools that are monitoring your network in real time. If you turn off your MFA, if you're late on patching a workstation, they'll know, and they may either price or deny coverage accordingly. At the same time, cyber policies are becoming much more customized. Instead of that one-size-fits-all approach that was great, premiums and coverage are now reflecting your actual risk posture. How strong your identity protection are, how well governed your endpoints are, how clean your SaaS footprint is, and how consistently your backup strategy is being executed. The message is simple. You can't insure what you can't secure. So in 2026, cybersecurity insurance is going to become an active partner in enforcing standards. And it's not just going to be a safety net. It's going to be an active contributor to that safety standpoint. And the businesses that stay proactive will get better pricing, more favorable terms, and fewer surprises at renewal. The fifth trend we're following is automation becoming a competitive advantage. Until now, most automation has been rule-based. You tell the system what to do, and it repeats the same action every time. But the next wave of intelligent automation is where systems understand context. They make decisions and they improve workflows on their own. These tools can be analyze a process, detect a bottleneck, and recommend or even actually implement improvements. Instead of just automating tasks, they help to redefine the entire operation. For small businesses, this is huge. Finance teams are going to get cleaner, faster, automated reconciliations. HR is going to get streamlined onboarding and offboarding. Operations are going to get automated reminders, escalations, and reporting. And customer service is going to get fewer manual tasks and more self-solving workflows. The difference in 2026 is that automation isn't just about saving time. It's becoming a strategic advantage, reducing operational costs, increasing accuracy, and freeing up teams to focus on real business priorities. Companies that adopt intelligent automation will outperform those that are still relying on manual processes or simple isolated workflows. This is the era of operational efficiency that actually learns and improves. The sixth trend we're following is governance finally mattering. In 2026, IT governance is getting a long overdue upgrade. Historically, as I talked about earlier, governance meant binders full of policies, spreadsheets, and manual checklists. Everyone knew the standards, but enforcing them consistently was nearly impossible, especially for a small and medium-sized business. That's going to change in 2026. Governance is no longer going to be something you follow. It becomes something that your systems are enforcing automatically. We'll have security baselines, device configurations, access controls, patching rules, compliance defaults, all of which will be managed centrally, all applied consistently, and all monitored in, as I was talking about, real time. And with AI entering IT operations, governance becomes more powerful. AI can detect configuration shift, flag exceptions, predict compliance risks, and automatically correct deviations before they become vulnerabilities. The result? Small teams suddenly have enterprise level governance without enterprise level overhead. For small businesses, this is transformative. It means fewer surprises, fewer gaps, smoother audits, stronger insurance renewals, and far more stable IT. Governance stops being a burden and it becomes a quiet, automated, proactive layer. 2026 is really going to be the year where governance stops being optional and starts becoming effortless. The seventh trend we're following is robots. This is the one that I personally am super excited about. 2026, we believe, is going to be the year when we start to see some businesses adopt robots from not just from a novelty, but from a practical standpoint, especially for small and mid-sized businesses. And we're not talking about sci-fi humanoids replacing people. We're talking about physical AI robots engineered to do very specific operational tasks with precision, safety, and consistency. What's changed is that robots are no longer confined rather to high budget manufacturing. They're becoming more adaptable, more affordable, and more capable of working alongside humans, not just replacing them. So we're seeing early adoptions in four main areas. First, on inventory and logistics robots. These have been out for a while, but becoming more and more mainstream, and even small businesses are starting to adopt these. These are the robots that navigate warehouses, stock rooms, and shop floors. They're tracking inventory in real time, identifying gaps, reducing shrinkage, freeing up staff from repetitive tasks. They're going and selecting items to get packed into boxes, in some cases, even participating in the packaging of those boxes. And they're autonomously working 24 hours a day, moving throughout your space, helping to aid and assist your team. The next is telepresence and remote collaboration robots. These are great for hybrid teams or distributed teams where they allow a remote person to be present in a physical space. Think of it almost like a robot that you can control that can walk through an office, interact with your staff. It'll have your voice. You'll be able to see what it sees. It'll have a screen that shows your face, but it allows you to be where you aren't physically. It won't be right for every single situation, but it does allow a person to be in more than one place at a time and really reduce the amount of travel and commuting that people have to do, but still be able to collaborate in a much more physical way. We're also seeing security and facilities robots. These are devices that are patrolling spaces, detecting anomalies, monitoring access points, and integrating with IT security systems, acting as an extra set of eyes with perfect memory and zero fatigue. These have been in place for a while, but now they're starting to become more mainstream. So, for example, if you've got a business where you're maybe concerned about an intruder or an unauthorized person entering the space, you could have a security robot that just monitors the perimeter, knows the facial recognition of everybody who's supposed to be there, identifies anybody who doesn't seem like they're supposed to be there, and sets off an alert or notifies somebody. Similarly, if you have a security system and a motion sensor goes off in a part of the building where you're not expecting there to be motion, the robot can go over to that space and with a camera inspect what's going on. This goes way beyond the traditional static cameras that we have mounted on walls or standard motion systems. This is much more dynamic, much more robust, and it's becoming very affordable and practical for businesses. And then finally, we're following material handling and task-specific robots. These are designed to carry, sort, deliver, or even assemble, especially useful in environments like logistics, healthcare, food service, light manufacturing. You may have seen some delivery robots that are delivering food. You're going to start to see these in mail rooms where there's a robot that delivers the mail to the various desks in the office. You're going to see food carts in hospitals delivering meals to patients. You're going to see these robots start to take on these just pretty simple tasks where they're moving objects around spaces in buildings. The key evolution to this physical AI is that robots are now being able to use really advanced sensing, mobility, and decision making to navigate dynamic environments safely and efficiently. They understand context, they know how to avoid obstacles, and they can learn from patterns. And here's what this means for IT. Robots become network connected endpoints. They have identities, they need authentication, they hold data, they integrate with business systems, which means IT teams and MSPs like us have to manage these robots just like any other device in your environment. Small businesses who start small with robotics in 2026 may start to figure out where this makes sense, how they can use this, and they're going to gain speed, reliability, and consistently ahead of everybody else who waits for this. And just like with automation and AI, physical robots amplify your team. They're not designed to replace them. So as we kind of put a cap on this, 2026 is not about one technology. It's about a convergence. AI, robotics, governance, all coming together to create this real shift that we're expecting to see in 2026, where these technologies stop evolving separately and start merging into a single ecosystem. Somebody predicted fairly recently that the word AI is going to fall out of our lexicon. Just like we don't say internet anymore, we don't talk about even the word technology very often. We just talk about it as if it's there. AI is going to start to become ubiquitous. When we're talking about technology, of course we mean AI because AI is integrated in everything. AI agents are going to start taking more actions. Automation is going to orchestrate more workflows. Identity is going to secure them, and robots are going to execute physical tasks. And blockchain-grade ledgers will provide trust and accountability for all of it. The idea comes from a major 2026 trend that was identified by Forbes, and it's incredibly relevant to small businesses because whether you're ready or not, the systems you rely on will become more interconnected, more intelligent, and more autonomous. And this convergence is what's going to drive this biggest transformation that we've ever seen. So why trust infrastructure matters now? One of the most interesting predictions that Forbes made was that AI agents are going to start doing more real work, which means organizations will need real trust infrastructure, systems that show exactly what happened, when, and by whom. This is not crypto hype. This is about auditability and transparency. Think about it. If an AI agent updates a financial record, changes a configuration, escalates a ticket, or interacts with one of your customers, you need a verified tamper-proof log of that action. Cyber insurance carriers, auditors, and regulators will begin requiring this. And SMBs will benefit from it because it reduces risk and prevents misconfigurations or unauthorized automations. This is some of the legislation that we are expecting may be coming down from the federal level. In 2026, having AI won't just be an advantage, it's going to be an absolute requirement. And so being able to prove that your AI did what it was supposed to do, the way it was supposed to do it, is going to be a necessity. Another thing we're paying attention to is that human expertise is becoming a scarcity advantage. The more counterintuitive, this may seem like a counterintuitive trend, but one of the most important things that Forbes predicted is that as AI generated content floods the world, human created content is actually going to become more valuable, not less. Human judgment, storytelling, experience, and perspective is going to become a premium differentiator. AI will handle volume. Humans will handle the nuance. So small businesses that can combine speed and scale of AI with the authenticity of human leadership will stand out amongst the crowd. Whether it's selling, communicating, supporting customers, or leading teams, human trust is going to matter more, not less, is the prediction that we are following. And so this is the year that we're hoping these two things really start working in tandem and we have less tension and more collaboration. So with so much happening, it's easy to get distracted by the hype. So let's separate the signal from noise. On the noise side, consumer AI, I think, is still somewhat of a fad. The promise of having robots in our home and Rosie, while I believe that is coming, I don't think that we're there yet. VR is the center of business. I really think the virtual reality thing is just not quite ready. The hardware isn't there. The adoption has not achieved. I think VR is still in the category of hype. I'm not ruling it out as not ever becoming into reality, but I just don't think we're there yet. And a lot of it is hardware driven. Robots are not going to replace entire offices, and big enterprise tools for SMBs aren't necessary. There's a lot of focus and effort there, but it just isn't needed, and you can avoid a lot of those sales tactics. What I do think is real is AI agents doing repeatable work, identity first security, cybersecurity insurance shaping our requirements, not just monitoring them. And then SaaS attack vectors are going to be really, really important. And therefore, we're going to need vendors and tools that help us manage that risk. So here's what you should do as you start to look ahead to the year. First, make sure you're strengthening your identity controls. Move towards passwordless and zero trust systems. Second, start thinking about cleaning up your SaaS sprawl, removing old accounts, reducing redundancy, auditing permissions, having policies. Then start preparing evidence for your insurance carriers. Getting your evidence and controls ready now will save you time later. Mature your IT governance. Make sure that you are doing the right things, you're automating enforcement, you're not relying on manual steps or occasional audits. Identify your automation opportunities. Start with HR, finance, and operations. Look for the lowest hanging fruit. And then evaluate where AI agents can reduce workload. They can take on docs, workflows, communication, escalations, and even monitoring. Small step now are going to be big wins for 2026. Here's what we would say you don't need to worry about investing in 2026. As I mentioned earlier, the VR, meta space, getting more tools, try to have less tools, not more. Really, really complex AI projects that talk about transforming every aspect of your business. I don't think we're there yet. And one-off automation tools, especially expensive ones. You want dynamic, robust tools that are going to be able to adapt and change with your business. So with that, we're going to pause in just a second and answer some questions. But before I move to questions, I just want to kind of quickly introduce you to an offering that we are looking at unveiling in 2026. And that offering is going to be our executive AI coaching program. At a very high level, this program is going to be working with businesses to not implement AI, but to prepare the business to become an AI capable business. We're going to do 2 lighthouse pilots within the first 90 days. We're going to build a prioritized AI value map for every department. We're going to do some lightweight governance, policy, intake guardrails. We're going to help build an adoption and ROI dashboard. And we're going to clearly help the business figure out how to scale, start, stop, and figure out which AI is worth investing in. In total, this is what will be included. There'll be an executive kickoff with your entire executive team to give them a state of AI and where AI is going to be impactful in your industry. We're then going to do a readiness and risk assessment to figure out what are the obstacles or barriers, human or technology, they're going to get in the way of your AI adoption. We're then going to build out a strategy and value map, figuring out 8 to 12 use cases scored by impact and effort, and then we're going to select 2 to execute as pilots. We'll do executive one-on-one coaching with your executive team. We're going to provide governance in a box, acceptable use policies, councils, charter, intake forms, everything you need to do governance right. We'll do some cohort trainings with managers and frontline staff. We'll do that pilot launch of 2 AI projects. We'll build you an adoption ROI dashboard, and then we'll have checkpoints throughout the process. The entire program is designed to last 1 year. And throughout that year, we will teach you how to be an AI-enabled business so that in the end, we haven't just done it for you, we've done it with you, and you've left this knowing how to do it. This program is going to be led by coaches who have 20 years of experience in business and technology, have experience either running or owning businesses of their own, and are experts at leading people and driving organizational change. So be on the lookout for this new offering coming in 2026. And also be on the lookout for our next webinar, which is going to be happening on Wednesday, January 21st, where we're going to take a look at the Microsoft toolset and figure out how you can better leverage it to become more productive, more organized, more efficient with your time. We'll be looking at a lot of tools that businesses don't take advantage of, but are already included in your subscription that could make you a faster, leaner, more efficient, more organized business. So with that, I want to open up the floor for any questions. Feel free to unmute your mic and ask it, or just post in the chat. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Yeah, so the first question I got asked is, which large language model do we recommend businesses use? I get this question a lot. There really is no right answer. We're using all different platforms for different use cases. So we're using some Claude, we're using some OpenAI, we're using some Copilot, we're using some Gemini. It really depends on the use case of what you're trying to do. Some of the tools are much better at coding, some are much better at language, some are much better at automation, some are much better at image generation or video generation. For those of you who missed the big announcement, Google just announced their competitor to Sora. Sora is the video generator that OpenAI came out with, the parent company of ChatGPT. Google just launched Flow, which is their answer to Sora and their video generating tool. Their image generator, Nano Banana, outperforms the image generator for Claude and for ChatGPT. Grok is a close competitor to theirs. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all easy answer, as nice and convenient as that would be. But we also have to look at the security of the data. If the data is confidential, we need to keep it in a controlled environment. That's where we tend to use Copilot because we can make sure the data never leaves the tenant. If the data is really non-confidential and is fairly public, then we can use some of these third-party tools with a little bit less risk. And that's where governance really matters so much in this space. You don't want your employees just signing up for any AI tool they can get their hands on, getting every trial, paying for small subscriptions, and ending up with data and information all kinds of places, sometimes insecure places that could create risk for the business. Mary wanted me to let everybody know that she posted the sign up for our January webinar in the chat. So if you want to see that, you can click there. We'll also send out our email invitations as we do and make sure that you have access there. And if you aren't familiar, you can go to our website and go to our webinar page where you can see every webinar we've ever done recorded and available, and also sign up for upcoming webinars in advance so that you can get on the list early. Somebody's asking about the moral and ethical implications of AI. This is such a broad topic. Honestly, it's one that we could do an entire webinar on and still only scratch the surface. And maybe we will look at doing that in 2026 because it is a question we get a lot. What are the moral and ethical implications? What's copyrighted? How do we navigate this? How do we make sure that we're doing things in a right and fair and proper way? It's a very, very big topic, not one that I can answer in a few minutes, but know that it is one that is worthwhile spending some time on and thinking about and getting some consultation and input on. What should we be worried about in 2026? I don't think we're going to get to our robotic overlords overtaking the planet in 2026. I don't think we're there. I'm still optimistic that we're not going to get there, but I don't think it's going to be 2026. I'm not even sure that 2026 will be the birth of of general AI. General AI, is anybody who has attended our previous webinars knows, is the moment where AI reaches human level of intelligence, meaning it can do everything a human being is capable of doing. We're not there. I don't think it's going to be 2026. I do still think it's going to be this decade. So I do still think it's going to be before we move into 2030. But the question is going to be, what is going to happen in 2026 that moves us closer to that? It's largely about power and compute right now. And this is where we're paying very close attention to which countries are bringing the most electricity online and dealing with some of the antiquated power grids that exist. This is an area where we are a little concerned because China is outperforming us in a significant way when it comes to bringing electricity online. They're bringing on nuclear, coal, wind, solar, all at the same time in enormous proportions. And what that's allowing them to do is have a competitive advantage in what is very much an AI race to see who can create general AI first. We have the computational power, but that's not an enormous advantage that can't be overcome. And so that's going to be an interesting trend to pay very close attention to is, do we either get somewhere with fusion where we all of a sudden are able to generate electricity in a very different way that is a breakthrough, or are we going to start adopting other types of energy at a much faster pace than we are right now and bringing a lot more power online than we have been? So those are two really interesting things that we're paying attention to because it's going to impact this AI race a lot. In terms of what's scary, the scary piece is going to be outages. As we become more and more dependent on these systems, and they do have outages or bugs or issues, We don't know what the ramifications are going to be. Are hospitals going to get shut down because an AI platform is offline? Are ambulances or security services or police services going to have the proper redundancy? Or are they going to be so dependent on these tools that they have a critical outage when these things are offline? So we need to understand that a little bit more. And I think that's something that I haven't heard as much about, but it's definitely something that concerns us that we want to pay close attention to. But I'm not worried about like robots picking up arms and coming after us. I don't think that's gonna be 2026. Hopefully I'm right. All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat, so we'll leave it there for today. If you do have any other questions that you want to ask offline, don't hesitate at all to reach out. We're happy to answer questions on a case-by-case basis. And otherwise, I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you in January as we kick off our 2026 webinar series. Thank you all very much.